أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الله لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم لا تأخذه سنة ولا نوم له ما في السماوات وما في الأرض من ذا الذي يشفع عنده إلا بإذنه يعلم ما بين أيديهم وما خلفهم ولا يحيطون بشيء من علمه إلا بما شاء وسع كرسيه السماوات والأرض ولا يؤوده حفظهما وهو العلي العظيم. صدق الله العظيم.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Honorable Chief Guest, Mrs. Zarar Hashim Khan, Secretary IT and Telecommunication, Government of Pakistan. Esteemed speakers, Air Marshal Zahid Mahmood, Director, Center for Aerospace and Security Studies, Dr. Mehreen Afzal, Director, GRC, National Cyber Emergency Response Team, Government of Pakistan, Dr. Sadia Zahoor, lawyer and policy expert, Mr. Javed Iqbal, who is joining us online. He is member of the Authority Special Technology Zone, Authority Cabinet Division, Government of Pakistan, Ambassador Khalid Mahmood, Chairman BOG ISSI, Ambassador Suhail Mahmood, Director General ISSI, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum. My name is Qasim Mustafa and I'm Director of Arms Control and Disarmament Center. And on behalf of the Institute and the Center, I warmly welcome you all to the seminar on navigating the cyber frontier, governance and security in a global digital commons. Dear participants, growing reliance on cyberspace, commonly known as the online world, has been transforming almost every facet of our life, and as it involves a diverse range of users, including states, corporations, educational institutions, financial institutions, and individuals, utilizing this global digital landscape. It has a greater potential to revolutionize our future, including our national security, as contemporary global communication and connectivity is becoming increasingly dependent on cyber technologies. However, this dependency has exposed and increased the vulnerability of the cyber domain for its misuse for criminal activities, cyber crimes, cyber warfare, and including cybersecurity threats or attacks against critical infrastructures. This vulnerability could cross border, impact economies, cause political instability, and impact societal well-being worldwide. Knowing such potential misuse of cyberspace, states are ensuring the protection of cyberspace from cyber threats and cyber warfare to safeguard their social, economic, and national security interest. States are introducing strong data protection laws and regulations to ensure secure access to such technologies, their application, and the realization of their potential use. However, there is also an urgent need for international cooperation and regulatory frameworks to deal with this threat. For Pakistan, the governance of cyberspace is crucial due to its strategic, economic, and social dimensions. Pakistan has already embarked upon this path of digital transformation with a vision to have a secure and robust nationwide digital ecosystem to ensure socio-economic development and national security. To materialize this digital transformation, Pakistan has taken several initiatives and attempts attach top priority to securing Pakistan's cyberspace. However, there is a need to raise awareness, promote cybersecurity culture, bridge the technological divide, develop cyberspace norms, and address other related challenges at the national level. This all requires a comprehensive and result-oriented discussion among relevant stakeholders. To explore these critical issues, the Arms Control and Disarmament Center at the Institute has organized this seminar with an aim to, number one, identify and examine the commonalities and differences between cyberspace and other global commons, explore the direct and indirect threats to national and international security arising from or through cyberspace, address the challenges posed by this global commons and propose actionable measures, and analyze the current governance structure of cyberspace and propose recommendation for enhancing cyber governance and mitigating threats within Pakistan's context. With these introductory remarks, now I would like to invite Ambassador Suhail Mahmood, Director General, Institute of Strategic Studies. Ambassador Suhail Mahmood is the Director General of Institute, and in his 37 years diplomatic career, he held key positions like Pakistan 30th Foreign Secretary, High Commissioner to India, Ambassador to Turkey, and Ambassador to Thailand. He has also held senior positions in Pakistan's missions in Washington and New York, and at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Islamabad. Sir, I hand over the floor to you.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Thank you, Qasim. It is indeed a great pleasure to welcome everyone to this seminar on navigating the cyber frontier. And thank you for braving the traffic challenges this morning occasioned by the Champions Trophy. We are indeed privileged to have a formidable group of distinguished speakers, including policymakers, experts, academics, and practitioners. It is also a distinct privilege to have Secretary IT and Telecommunications, Mr. Zafar Hashim Khan, delivering the keynote address. We would all stand to benefit from their rich insights and policy perspectives. Distinguished participants, the rapid evolution of cyberspace has transformed it into a vital global common akin to maritime and outer space. As a digital ecosystem that transcends national boundaries, cyberspace serves as the backbone of communication, trade, governance, and security. However, its vast reach also presents unprecedented challenges, ranging from cyber warfare and espionage to cybercrime and threats to national security. The Global Cybersecurity Outlook 2025, published by the World Economic Forum, highlights that 72% of organizations have reported an increase in cyber risks over the past year, with ransomware remaining a top concern. The report also notes that geopolitical tensions have influenced the cybersecurity strategies of nearly 60% of organizations, underscoring the intricate link between global affairs and digital security. The governance of cyberspace is no longer a purely technical matter. It is a key issue of national security and has implications for strategic stability. Cyberspace plays a crucial role in international diplomacy, economic competition, and geopolitical rivalries. The ability of nation states to influence digital infrastructure, control information flows, and deploy cyber capabilities as tools of statecraft highlights the rapidly growing strategic significance of this domain. Despite international efforts, cyberspace governance remains fragmented. The absence of a universally accepted framework has allowed cyber threats to proliferate, affecting national and international security. The lack of clear norms, regulations, and enforcement mechanisms has enabled malicious actors, both state and non-state, to exploit cyberspace with relative impunity. To help address these concerns, it is essential to work simultaneously at multiple levels. Action in four areas is of pivotal importance. One, developing comprehensive national cyber policies that strengthen legal frameworks, cybersecurity infrastructure, and institutional resilience. Two, enhancing international cooperation to counter cybercrime, cyberterrorism, and state-sponsored cyber threats. Three, promoting multilateral dialogue to establish globally accepted norms and governance mechanisms for cyberspace. And four, investing in cybersecurity capacity building, ensuring that both public and private sectors are equipped to address emerging cyber threats. For Pakistan, cybersecurity is a critical national concern. As the country rapidly digitizes its economy and governance systems, it faces evolving cyber threats that could impact financial stability, critical infrastructure, and national security. The growing intersection of cyberspace further necessitates an integrated cybersecurity strategy that aligns with Pakistan's broader national security objectives. As a responsible state, Pakistan must engage actively in shaping the global discourse on on cyber governance. The country's strategic position, growing digital economy, and regional security environment demand a holistic approach to cybersecurity that integrates legal, technical, and diplomatic measures. A multi-stakeholder approach involving government agencies, private sector actors, academia, and international partners is essential to ensuring a resilient and secure cyberspace for Pakistan. As we move forward, ensuring a secure, open, and stable cyberspace requires collective action. The deliberations in today's seminar will contribute significantly to identifying solutions, fostering collaboration, and formulating strategies that align with Pakistan's national security imperatives. With these words, I conclude by extending my sincere gratitude to all the distinguished speakers and participants for joining us in this important seminar. Thank you and welcome again. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, our keynote speaker for today's seminar is Mr. Zarar Hashim Khan. He is currently working as Federal Secretary at Ministry of Information Technology and Telecommunications. Previously, he served as a Group Chief Business Solutions Officer at Pakistan Telecommunication Company Limited. Mr. Zarar worked for 11 years in STC Kuwait, a Saudi telecom group company, as Chief Technology Officer and also superheaded one of the largest commercial deployments of 5G services in the world in 2019. Mr. Zarar has had a vast local and international experience in the investment banking domain as well as with leading telecom services provided, including Saudi Telecom, Mobilink GSM. He is also a seasoned professional with planning and execution experience in strategy development, technology operations, governance, risk and control, customer experience management, and product development. I'll now invite Mr. Zarar Hashim Khan to deliver his keynote address. Sir, you have the floor now.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Ambassador Khalid Mahmood, Chairman, Board of Governors, ISSI. Ambassador Sohail Mahmood, Director General, ISSI. Air Marshal Zahid Mahmood, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum. First of all, I would like to thank ISSI for arranging this seminar, and the timing of it could not have been more perfect. I think the speakers who are going to be presenting after me, they are specialists in their areas, and they will be delving into the specific landscapes and threats and opportunities that are there in the ecosystem of cyberspace. But very briefly, I want to talk about three key areas which I think form the context both at the national level, but also at the global level when we are looking at the global digital commons, as well as the role of cybersecurity and cyber sovereignty when it comes to the cyberspace. The first thing is that what we must be aware of is that globally we are transitioning from the third industrial revolution to the fourth industrial revolution. And whenever there is a transition from one industrial revolution to another, the overall power balance shifts. And what we are seeing is that the current fourth industrial revolution, of which we are at the cusp of, the power dynamics globally are shifting. The opportunities are shifting and the threats are also shifting. We are seeing that in the previous third industrial revolution, it was all about trade routes. It was about globalizations. The sovereignty at times was either economic sovereignty or territorial sovereignty. And therefore, the defense of that sovereignty was also within those domains. With the fourth industrial revolutions, things are becoming very, very globalized. And traditional territorial boundaries, the way we saw it, they are melting very fast. Today, when we talk of sovereignty, more than the territorial sovereignty, there are new dynamics of sovereignty that are emerging. Sovereignty such as data sovereignty, sovereignty such as hearts and minds sovereignty. And I think within those contexts, we are also seeing that the fight of sovereignty and the protection of sovereignty is also coming into this area. The cyberspace is forming the core areas where that sovereignty is not just established, but it also needs to be protected. The second thing is that when we talk about the economic protection, how the contours of the economic protections are changing. Previously, the economic activity and the economic wealth of any nation was defined by two things. It was defined by the inherent wealth that particular nation had. And, with the third industrial revolution, there was a new dynamics of intellectual wealth. Before, it was the wealth which could be measured in pure economic terms. And the second was that the trade routes, protection of trade routes. And therefore, there was a word that was being used a lot over the last 30 odd years, which was strategic lines of communication and protection of strategic lines of communications. Again, the nature of those lines of communications are changing. Today, instead of strategic lines of communications, we are talking about strategic lines of digital communications. When now warfare is being, war is being imposed on a country, we first want to cut off that country strategic lines of digital communication. The commerce is now shifted from standard commerce of goods and services to e-commerce. And we believe that within the next 5 years, the quanta of e-commerce, if measured in monetary terms, will far surpass the quanta of traditional goods and services. Therefore, when we talk about protection of economic sovereignty, even the protection of economic sovereignty is now shifting into the cyber domain. The third thing that we are seeing is that where a word that was being used, that was critical infrastructure. The nature of critical infrastructure is also changing. Today, when we look at critical infrastructure, we are looking at critical infrastructure from the perspective of what, if compromised, can totally bring a country to a halt. And there are a couple of areas which, if compromised, can bring a country to a halt. For example, disruption of connectivity with the global internet. For example, if you look at even Pakistan and the rest of the world, the exchange of monetary value is now shifting from currency to other digital means. Disruption in any infrastructure that is utilized for exchange of monetary values. Then you are looking at, of course, how people are accessing information, or even worse, how disinformation can be provided to a people where, the truth is no longer something that we can hold in a regard where it is absolute. A term is being used that we are now living in a post-truth era, where the truth is not what is actually the reality, but the truth is what people are perceiving to be the reality. And I think many countries of the world have started to see that. The third thing is when you look at espionage, the espionage, primary way of doing espionage, whether it is industrial espionage or it is something which is being done by nation states, that is also pushing into the cyber domain. Now, with this rapidly changing environment and new realities that is dawning upon us, what is the response of Pakistan? How are we preparing ourselves, not just from a strategy perspective, but also from a regulatory, policy and legislative perspective? How are we making sure that every action that we take, specifically as we are entering in the fourth industrial revolution, is protecting ourselves from the harms and really ensuring that we can create value for our nation and its people? So today, I believe that, where we stand now, we are standing at a cusp where there is challenge and there is risk and threat, but there is also a big land of opportunity. And, seminars such as these, they provide the intellectual impetus for us to not just deliberate, but also synthesize and crystallize actions whether at the policy level or at the execution level, which can then be taken by Ministry of IT in particular, in the federal government, and the provincial governments in general, so that we have a unified understanding, a unified strategy, and a unified execution roadmap. So with that, I thank again ISSI for inviting me to this event, and I wish everybody a very intellectually stimulating and a productive workshop. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Our first speaker for today is Air Marshal Zahid Mahmood Tat, Senior Director at the Center for Aerospace and Security Studies, CAS, and former Vice Chief of Air Staff, PAF. He is a graduate of National Defense and Air War College and has 36 years of experience in military aviation as a fighter pilot. During his distinguished service, he held key command and staff appointments, including Assistant Chief of Air Staff Plans, Director General C4I, Deputy Chief of Air Staff Personnel, and Vice Chief of Air Staff. His expertise include national security, traditional security threats, and strategic doctrines and policy. And he has been awarded Stara Halal Imtiaz Military for his contribution to the PF. I now invite Air Marshal Zahid Mahmood to share his views on cybersecurity and national security. Sir, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, sir. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Excellencies, Honorable Secretary IT, distinguished speakers today, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for inviting me to speak on a topic of immense importance, like Secretary Saab said, and something which is actually very dear to my heart also. I will try and keep my comments and remarks very short and finish within the time allocated to me. Also, because of the thematic nature of the seminar today, there are a lot of areas where one can tend to slip into another domain. While as much tempting as it would be, I will try and restrict myself to just the relationship between cybersecurity and national security. And I intend doing that by highlighting just 3 important points. One is the concept and evolution of the notion of national security. Then is the concept of state sovereignty in the cyber domain. And thirdly, what are the threats to national security which emanate or transition through cyberspace? When we look at this notion of national security, it is itself as old as the Treaty of Westphalia, that is around the mid-1600s. As the idea of nation state was born, the notion of state sovereignty took its place in the state behavior and interstate relations. At that time, the only things that states needed to protect was its territory and its resources. And with the advent of navies and air forces and 2 world wars, this idea of territorial integrity was reinforced or added on by maritime security and protection of one's sovereign airspace. But still, it remained confined to fighting wars based on material things that a state holds. As we advanced post-Cold World War, the non-traditional security and threats became a topic of scholarly writings first. And by the mid-90s, it was established as something very important to each state. The non-traditional security focused on well-being of the citizens of a state, and such as food security, water security, and stuff like that. Few ideas which are central to the theme of non-traditional national security remain confined to states' action to protect its citizens from non-traditional threats, but a large part of it became dependent on interstate behavior and international collaboration. Climate change, for example, is not possible for any one state unless all states collaborate towards a goal. along the 90s, the seeds of the idea of cybersecurity were actually sown in the early 70s with the advent of the first man-made virus which infected a computer. Ironically, that virus was made to test the security and integrity of its own internal systems. But that led those software houses to think about developing systems which would protect your systems and personal computers from cyber threats or threats emerging from within the internet. So by the 1990s, this world of cyber security became a reality. And as we advanced towards the 2000s, the rise and popularization of digital technologies, it transformed the concept of national security. The other thing, it no longer remained a domain within itself. It started to transcend all other domains. For example, it had a wide role to play in non-traditional security. It had a great role to play in the traditional security sense also, because military systems started to depend on the cyberspace and use of cyberspace. Military operations, businesses, and critical infrastructure, like the Secretary Sahab mentioned, everything is now touched or is dependent upon cyberspace. So therefore, cybersecurity is now the overarching concept residing within the greater ambit of national security. Therefore, it is now becoming the focus of all nations. The other second thing which I wanted to touch upon was this notion of traditional sovereignty and sovereignty in the cyber sense. It's a very interesting and very scholarly subsection of this whole theme of this seminar. So I will leave it to the subject matter experts. My personal take on this is that the concept of cyber sovereignty is new, and international community is still struggling to grapple with the concept and come to a definition, and later on, hopefully in some time, an agreement on that topic. So what is the difference? Once we say traditional sovereignty, it means or translates into an exclusive right of a state to govern itself without interference from external powers. Therefore, you have territorial borders, airspace management, and maritime boundaries, which you defend with your life. In the cyber sense, if you translate the whole thing into the cyber domain, what is cyber sovereignty of a nation? That means the state has a right to exercise control over its own digital infrastructure and activities without interference from external powers, hopefully. But how do you define boundaries within the cyberspace? How do you define borders? How do you control this? And what is the jurisdiction of a nation on an activity which is taking place inside its cyberspace but is originating from outside its territorial borders? So these are hard questions. And on my study of this topic, at least for the last 10 to 15 years, there have been serious attempts at the United Nations level to bring everybody on common understanding and hopefully reach an agreement. But the process is long drawn, and to me, there is no immediate solution available. So domestically, there have been attempts by states to assert their cyber sovereignty in various forms and ways. For example, we talk of the Great Firewall of China. That China uses a model whereby it controls all activities within the cyber domain which are taking place in China. There was a concept which is now eroding very fast. Iran tried to follow the same model by introducing something which they called as the halal internet, where they controlled the activities which took place internally. They were successful in some ways, but my take on this is that there are pitfalls on this model. The greatest argument against this model theoretically is that it denies the individuals the right to knowledge which is available in the cyberspace. Secondly, they are expensive to put in place. It takes technical expertise and special infrastructure to put such kind of a boundary on your internet or cyberspace. So one is the direct cost that you incur, and the third is the business opportunities that you lose because of isolating from the global community. So there are pitfalls into that. And as we progress into the next decade, with the emergence of newer technologies, quantum computing, artificial intelligence, advanced VPNs, proxies, so technically, they are also not very possible as they were possible in the going and the previous decades. For example, when a foreigner visits China, they use VPNs to connect to the rest of the world. Whether it can be controlled or not is a technical discussion. I will not go there. But what I mean to say is there are solutions available, but they have their own pitfalls. So coming to the last topic, what is the threat to national security which emerges from or uses cyber domain as a medium? There are thousands of models available which I can follow. I selected the one which is used by the Canadian Center of Cybersecurity. It is simple and it is easy to understand. On the left-hand column are the cyber threat actors, and on the right is their motivation. This is how the Canadian Center of Cyberspace recognizes threats to national security. So they say that when nation states do cyber warfare against you, their motivation is geopolitical in nature. And the cyber criminals do it for profit. Hacktivists, they have ideological motivation. Terrorist groups, they have ideological violence in their mind. Thrill seekers just do it for satisfaction. And the insider threats are due to the discontent which resides within the society. This may seem oversimplified to you. And if I try and translate it into the real world, I would add another column to this, which would be what are the target sets that these entities use. So when the nation states or state-sponsored non-state actors use cyber warfare for geopolitical reasons, their target or the prime target would be, like the Secretary Saab mentioned, critical infrastructure. What do you call critical infrastructure? How do you defend it? Depends on the state policy. And in the traditional security sense, everything is falling in the same domain of critical infrastructure. Cyber criminals, when they do it for profit, it is mostly for attacking your personal and financial information available in the cyber domain. Every week, at least I hear of a couple of cases where the WhatsApp was hacked or the bank account was hacked and such money was lost. So these are now everyday realities. Hacktivists, for ideal reasons, they are now targeting your social and psychological targets using social media. Same is for the terrorist groups. And thrill seekers are also now more and more cases in Pakistan are emerging for personal and financial gains from the targets. And insider threat are just discontented youth who are experimenting with what all is possible in the cyber domain. With that, I think I have run out of my allocated time, and I leave the subject open to much more learned people who are going to speak after me. However, for those who want to know a greater deal on national security, sovereignty, and how the cyber domain affects, I have a working paper which is available online. It talks in greater detail about how all these things are interconnected with each other. With that, I thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, sir. Our next speaker for today is Dr. Mehreen Afzal, Director of Governance, Risk and Compliance at the National Cyber Emergency Response Team of Pakistan. She holds a PhD in Information Security from NUST and possesses globally recognized certifications in the field. Dr. Afzal has made significant contribution to information security, earning the prestigious Pride of Performance Award. Her expertise lies in cybersecurity governance, risk management, and compliance, making her a distinguished voice in the realm of national cyber resilience. Today, she will be speaking on cyberspace as a global common. Ma'am, you have the floor.
Thank you very much for having me for this talk and giving me this opportunity. So we all know what is cyberspace. And if I try to give just one word to cyberspace, it will be connectivity. People have been saying for a long time that the world has become a global village. And I at least made sense of it when I realized the fascinating realm of connection sometime recently. These days, a young person sitting in a faraway town in one part of the world might work for a firm at the other end of the planet. And likewise, an idea is proposed in one place and supported or improved or endorsed by someone at the other end of the world. Therefore, there are no boundaries in this cyberspace, not even those clearly delineated borders between country governments. But then, as a matter of fact, on one hand, it is accessible to all, but it is not owned by any one entity. As an information security professional, I see cyber threats as a significant challenge because just like the positive aspect of an idea traveling from one part of the world to another, or a patient being treated from one part of the world to another and the doctor sitting at another part, cyber attacks can also be launched from one part of the world to any other part. So basically, it is not like that generally we can say very easily that since we have a common cyberspace, so not only that our challenges are common, but also our solutions are common. Here I have listed a few attacks which I have collected some of the statistics which have been published at some global forums. And those statistics shows what is the quantity of attacks, different type of attacks in different years. I just want to highlight few of them, and then I will relate with our position as well, because here I want to make this point that cyberspace is a common place now. It is not, we cannot place boundaries, whether it is we are talking about the attacks or we are talking about the solutions. Like, for example, here we can find statistics of phishing attacks. And phishing attacks since from 2022 to 2024, almost 4,151% increase in these type of attacks has occurred. Then there are a few ransomware attacks which have considerably increased. So these type of attacks are, these statistics are collected by global forums and are from overall the world. Now, if we see some of our statistics, which are collected at National CERT, and these are about those attacks which have been reported or which have been somehow covered by National CERT, we can see that again here also we can see ransomware attacks. Somehow here data leaks, which are about 25%. And now let me tell you this, these data leaks are mostly due to the phishing attacks, which we were seeing a very common and very large part of the attacks globally as well. So if we talk about our national websites and national our infrastructure where attacks we can see attacks, these are similar to the attacks which have been occurring throughout the world. Now, if we talk about the protection measures, again, these are not very different from those which are taken care of throughout the world. Rather, let me share with you. While I was reading a book of maybe a US author or a European author, when they talk about how what kind of difficulties they feel when they try to implement cybersecurity in their enterprise, most of the time the factors they say are so much similar to our condition that sometimes I feel that this has been written by some Pakistani author. So the most of the time they say that because of the fact that top management is not interested in implementing those security measures, or they are not of opinion, or they are not ready to invest in that type of things. So likewise, there are lack of cybersecurity policies and regulations. But as I have already mentioned that since the attacks are common, the solutions are also common. And we can see the example of GDPR. When GDPR comes by European Union for the data privacy, many countries adopted that. And even when they developed their regulations, those were also mostly derived from GDPR, or and even though best practices given by OECD were also dependent or were also derived from mainly GDPR. So we can say that all of these, I have listed few of the things which are very commonly well known to all of the information security professionals. So one of the, again, global, since we are talking about the global commons, so one of the global commons is national certs. Every country has a cert, cyber emergency response teams, and those certs are also globally connected. So in Pakistan as well, now we have our national cert, and we are also developing our relationship and our connection with other countries. So this is basically the only way of struggling with these kind of challenges which we have in this area. Our main components are, again, just like any very well-known cert, which is globally common. And we have our incident response management part. We have our national and international collaborations, forensic labs, and our capacity building, and our governance, risk, and compliance section. So these are the globally well-known components of the national cert, which are now established in Pakistan as well. So if I conclude my talk just with these things, that as national cert, as part of national cert, we are contributing to improve cybersecurity posture and developing policy frameworks. And those policy frameworks, as I already mentioned, that again, in this field, we do not need to maybe invent anything. Globally, many good practices and well-known practices or standards are available. But the challenge comes in the adoption. But then again, when I see the global picture, I find that we are not isolated. Every country is struggling in implementation as well, and every nation, as obviously with their different resources, they have different type of challenges. In Pakistan, we have the resources challenges as well. But then the main challenge is of adopting the culture of information security. In any successful implementation, it depends on the clear strategic direction, and those directions comes most of the time from the management commitment and from the top management. So I can say that cyberspace is a shared responsibility. Securing it requires global cooperation, advanced technology, and awareness, and we must balance security, privacy, and accessibility. So with this, I thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mehri. Ladies and gentlemen, our third speaker is Dr. Sadia Zahoor, a lawyer specializing in public international law, who will be speaking on cyber governance and international law. She has served as a policy expert on non-traditional security at National Security Division and has as a legal consultant at ICRC. She previously held roles at Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Bahria University. Dr. Zahoor holds an LLB honors, LLM and PhD in law from International Islamic University, Islamabad. Ma'am, you have the floor now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for having me. I hope this is not the last time, because what I'm gonna say will upset whatever people have said before me. Also, you people are so serious that I'm feeling like that I'm not at the right place. So, so apologies in advance for everything that I'm gonna say. But you can see that I have slides. I have prepared this in advance, not knowing what people are gonna say. Obviously, working with the National Security Division, I also will dwell into some of the aspects of national security, although try to focus on international law. First thing first, why we have a talk about cybersecurity? It is because it has not only challenged what has happened to the national security paradigm, but also because it was state centric, because the security of the state was state centric, international law was state centric. So we have the challenge, because cyberspace is place where the civilians or the individuals are the center of everything, because they are the users, they are the providers. Because आपको ये समझना चाहिए कि मेरे ख्याल से फॉरेनर्स चले गए, इंटरनेशनल लॉ जो डेवलप किया था वो भी स्टेट्स के साथ किया था, एज अ सेंटर में स्टेट थी. बट द पॉइंट वाज दैट now that individuals and internet is provided by individuals, by companies, by organizations, they are not states. So everything has been challenged. Disruptor hai internet or cyberspace. Because of the challenges, international law is struggling, national security paradigms are struggling, and we are struggling to have binding norms. ये हमारा सबसे बड़ा problem है international law में, जिसकी हम बात करेंगे. And everything said about cyber sovereignty, digital sovereignty, jurisdiction, these things are general principles of international law, but we will see how they are probably not applicable in cyberspace. So I am not going to talk about incidents that happened and how international responded, but the two things that I want to mention. This is a case of Albania. Why I'm mentioning this, that ये आपको बताता है कि जब अल्बानिया पे अटैक हुआ और उनका बॉर्डर पे सिस्टम पे जब अटैक हुआ ईरान की तरफ से, allegedly ईरान की तरफ से, 4 non-state actor groups attacked them. For like a good 6 months, their system was disrupted, and Albania got so offended that they obviously it affected their diplomatic relation with Iran. But also, they at one point in time thought about invoking Article 5 of the NATO treaty, and वो उन्होंने क्यों नहीं किया इसके बारे में information ज़्यादा public पे नहीं है. But the point is that collective self-defense can be invoked in case of a cyber operation. But these are the examples that you will find. If अगर मैं किसी भी ऑडियंस दुनिया में बात कर रही होती तो यही एग्जाम्पल से स्टार्ट करती हूँ. बट मैं आपको वो एग्जाम्पल अब देना चाहती हूँ जो अपने मुल्क में ज़्यादा इंपॉर्टेंट है. और मैं इस जो एग्जाम्पल देने लगी हूँ उसमें मैं क्योंकि खुद काम किया है पर्सनली, लेकिन ये सारी इन्फॉर्मेशन वो इन्फॉर्मेशन है जो पब्लिक डोमेन में मौजूद है. सो देयर वाज अ अटैक दैट हैपेंड इन लाहौर. और जैसे ही वो अटैक होता है, और आई थिंक 3 to 4 people died in that particular attack. Not the main target, obviously, but other people, passerbys. And that time, thousands of coordinated attacks were happened on our investigative जो mechanism है, जहाँ से हम देख सकते हैं, नंबर निकाल सकते हैं गाड़ी का, टेलीफोन का, सिम का, उस पर अटैक होते हैं. The whole point was कि हमारा सिस्टम इतना डाउन हो जाए कि हम आइडेंटिफाई ना कर सके, और वो जो ग्रुप है वो डिस्पर्स हो सके. एंड द मेन कल्प्रिट वाज एक्चुअली अरेस्टेड फ्रॉम द एयरपोर्ट, बिकॉज वो इतनी देर लग रही थी सारे प्रोसेस को करने के लिए. So we talk about how it will affect, or how it affecting the world, and how it affecting the cyber ये जो phone frauds and everything, but I think it's a bigger problem, which is a warfare problem. It is a bigger problem, and it is aligned with the kinetic operations. So we have this example of our own country. We don't talk about it, and I remember when the investigation would happen, when we were preparing for the press release, everybody was more concerned about how much कितना बड़ा धमाका में वो डाला था, मसाला डाला था, कितने केजीज था, कितना बड़ा गढ़ा है, और कितनी जल्दी हमने सब कुछ कर लिया. Nobody was focusing on that there was a coordinated cyber operation with it. But that's an example that we have to focus on. बट ये आपको एग्जांपल मैं इसलिए दे रही हूँ कि मैं आपको पाकिस्तान की पोजीशन बताऊंगी ऑन साइबर स्पेस पे और इंटरनेशनल लॉ में, सोवरेनिटी पे और टेरिटोरियल इंटीग्रिटी पे. एंड देन आप ये देखिए, और अटैक क्या होता है, साइबर अटैक क्या होता है, बिकॉज साइबर अटैक यू कांट पुट टेक जनरल प्रिंसिपल ऑफ इंटरनेशनल लॉ और अटैक एंड देन अप्लाई ऑन दिस. तो आप ये देखेंगे कि ये पाकिस्तान की एग्जाम्पल है, और फिर पाकिस्तान का स्टैंड इंटरनेशनल लॉ पे और पाकिस्तान फिर करता क्या है, वो इंटरेस्टिंग होगा. As sir has mentioned, there were a lot of groups. I don't want to go into details, but it was a long process. It started in 2004. 2021 तक reports आती रही हैं working groups की. There was a group of experts, governmental experts. There was another UN parallel process of open-ended working group. And उनकी reports आई हैं, और सबसे significant 2015 वही report है, because it was later on accepted by, adopted by UN General Assembly by consensus. And it has a certain principle, but a lot of these principles are also non-binding. But एक कंसेंसस स्टेट्स का था उसमें, और ग्रुप का और एक्सपर्ट्स का, कि इंटरनेशनल लॉ डज अप्लाई टू साइबर स्पेस. बट फॉर एवरीथिंग एल्स, फ्रॉम IHL, राइट ऑफ सेल्फ डिफेंस, वेदर सोवरेनिटी क्या होती है, अटैक क्या होता है, इस पे कोई कंसेंसस नहीं है किसी भी का. Then these are some of the examples. जो हमारा लॉ है, सबसे इम्पोर्टेंट साइबर क्राइम ट्रीटी जो रिसेंटली हुई है, लेकिन वो अभी साइन के लिए खुली नहीं है. दिस ईयर इट विल बी ओपन फॉर सिग्नेचर्स, एंड वी विल सी कि 2026 तक कौन उसको साइन करता है और रेटिफाई करता है, और वो एप्लीकेबल होती है नहीं. बुडापेस्ट कन्वेंशन साइबर क्राइम्स पे, उसका एडिशनल प्रोटोकॉल, Pakistan is not signatory. Nobody in our region or extended region is the member. But obviously countries like US, UK, Canada, Israel are member states of that. And then there's a registered protocol. Even lesser countries are a member of it. And then the customary international law that I probably will talk about later. But then there is one thing that every single person working on international law and cyber talk about Tallinn manual. But मैं सिर्फ इतना कहना चाहती हूँ कि it's just an academic endeavor and it's non-binding thing. So stop quoting it as something of a divine nature. And then Messinar agreement, this is something important for Pakistan, because again, this is an arrangement, not a binding thing, but a lot of countries adopted this. This is for export control of the dual usage की जो technology होती है. पाकिस्तान ने नहीं साइन किया, but India, US and other countries have adopted this. So as everybody has mentioned, like international law applies on cyber. That essentially means कि cyber operation पे आप UN charter and every general principle जो उसके साथ deal करते हैं, वो apply करते हैं. Not only on the physical aspect of it, but also on the more कॉग्निटिव जो आपका डायमेंशन है. इसलिए फ्रीडम ऑफ स्पीच हो, इंटेलेक्चुअल प्रॉपर्टी राइट्स हो, सब चीज़ों पे साइबर अप्लाई करता है. लेकिन अगर मैं आपको सिर्फ एग्जांपल दूं, मैं मोफा के थिंक टैंक में हूं, सो मैंने वियना कन्वेंशन ऑफ डिप्लोमेटिक रिलेशन की एग्जांपल दी है. ये कहना बहुत आसान है कि इंटरनेशनल लॉ अप्लाई कर दे, UN चार्टर अप्लाई कर दे, प्रिंसिपल्स अप्लाई कर दे, पर लुक एट दिस एग्जांपल. सो हम ये कहते हैं कि फिजिकल प्रीमिसेस जो होता है, आपको पता है एम्बेसीज का प्रोटेक्टेड होता है, मिशंस का प्रोटेक्टेड होता है, बट क्या उनका इंटरनेट भी प्रोटेक्टेड होता है? Because the treaty specifically says that physical premises is protected. So बहुत सारे international scholars कहते हैं कि that doesn't include internet. So internet is not protected. But communication is protected. With the same line, तो communication चाहे digital हो, उसकी कोई specific नहीं किया हुआ, तो वो protected है. And then there is a third, यानी एक में हम clear हैं कि नहीं है. सेकेंड प्रिंसिपल पे हम लग रहा है कि क्लियरली अप्लाई करता है. और थर्ड प्रिंसिपल में देयर आर टू अप्रोचेस विच इज अबाउट इनवॉल्बिलिटी ऑफ आर्काइव्स. तो लिमिटेड अप्रोच वाले जो लोग हैं, या नैरो अप्रोच में इंटरनेशनल, बिकॉज देयर आर नो बाइंडिंग प्रिंसिपल्स, देयर आर नो बाइंडिंग प्रिंसिपल्स सो फार, देयर इज नो बाइंडिंग ट्रीटी दैट सेज वन थिंग और अदर. कि डिजिटल आर्काइव्स प्रोटेक्टेड होते हैं, और दूसरी लिमिटेड अप्रोच कहती है कि नहीं होते हैं, एंड इंक्लूसिव अप्रोच कहती है कि नहीं, द आइडिया वाज टू प्रोटेक्ट ऑल सॉर्ट ऑफ आर्काइव्स, वेदर दे आर डिजिटल और अदरवाइज, इट डजंट मैटर. and sovereignty now comes to sovereignty, because I think everybody talks about it, but what does it mean कि sovereignty in cyberspace में क्या होती है? जैसे सर ने कहा था, I will not repeat कि the ability of a state to make laws internally, policies, mechanism, and free from external interference. अफ्रीकन यूनियन कहते तो, लेकिन उसका मैनिफेस्टेशन कैसे होती है, क्या होगा? तो हम उसको कहेंगे कि क्या जिस दिन वो 1000 ऑफ कोऑर्डिनेटेड अटैक्स हुए हमारे इन्वेस्टिगेटिव मैकेनिज्म्स पे, तो क्या वो हमारी सोवरेनिटी का ब्रीच था, या कोई हमारे डैम्स को या हमारे ग्रिड को अगर वो साइबर के साथ अटैच है तो उसको अटैक करेगा, तो हम कहेंगे कि वो साइबर की हमारी साइबर सोवरेनिटी की वायलेशन है। अफ्रीकन यूनियन कहते एनी सॉर्ट ऑफ अनऑथराइज्ड एक्सेस इज इलीगल। बट यूरोपियन यूनियन कहता है कि जब तक हमारी सोवरेनिटी तब तक इन्फ्रिंज नहीं होती है जब तक गवर्नमेंट का जो फंक्शन है उसको अटैक नहीं किया जाता। सो यू नो देयर आर अटैक्स, जैसे मैम ने कहा कि देयर आर सो मेनी अटैक्स एवरी डे, थाउजेंड्स ऑफ अटैक्स एवरी डे, बट एसेंशियली हैव नो इम्पैक्ट ऑन द गवर्नमेंट फंक्शंस। तो लेकिन कनाडा कहता है, फॉर एग्जांपल सर ने एस्पिनाज की बात की थी, सो कनाडा बिलीव्स दैट साइबर एस्पिनाज इज नॉट अ क्राइम अंडर इंटरनेशनल लॉ। इवन यूएस हैज द सेम पोजीशन, बिकॉज वो कहते हैं कि हम एस्पिनाज हमेशा डोमेस्टिक लॉ में आपका क्राइम होता है, इंटरनेशनल लॉ में नहीं। तो अगर कोई इंटरनेट में जाके आपके सिस्टम के अंदर घुस गया और देख रहा है और आपको इन्फॉर्मेशन गैदर कर रहा है, दैट्स नॉट अ क्राइम अंडर इंटरनेशनल लॉ, एंड देयर इज नो बाइंडिंग प्रिंसिपल दैट सेज अदरवाइज। So as much as we would like to think about those principles that generally international law में apply करते हैं, non cyber situation वो इस पे apply नहीं करते। UK also has this principle that says that, you know, you can't import general principles of international law and apply in a cyber, and because there's not enough state practice to support that. पाकिस्तान की इस पे कोई position नहीं है, क्योंकि पाकिस्तान की position जो है वो बहुत ही it's not very detailed, not going into the details of what we mean by sovereignty and everything. As mentioned, US also believes that a remote cyber operation जो है वो inherently violation नहीं करते international law की। तो अपने मुल्क से बैठ के दूसरे मुल्क को अटैक करना जिसमें आप बहुत ज़्यादा नुकसान नहीं कर रहे हैं या इन्फॉर्मेशन गैदरिंग कर रहे हैं, तो वो क्राइम नहीं है, वो वायलेशन नहीं है इंटरनेशनल लॉ की। सो एंड देन यू नो UN चार्टर की हम बात करते हैं, फिजिकल अटैक की बात करते हैं कि वो ना करे। यूरोपीय यूनियन एंड अफ्रीकन यूनियन और कनाडा बिलीव करते हैं कि आप कभी भी कोई अटैक देखेंगे तो ऑटोमेटिकली उस पर इंटरनेशनल लॉ अप्लाई नहीं कर देंगे, उस पर राइट ऑफ सेल्फ डिफेंस अप्लाई नहीं कर देंगे, या ये यूज ऑफ फोर्स आर्टिकल 24 की वायलेशन नहीं हो जाएगी अनटिल अनलेस देयर इज अ स्केल एंड इफेक्ट। सो स्केल बहुत ज्यादा और इफेक्ट इससे कोई नुकसान हो एसेंशियली। सो अब पाकिस्तान की सिचुएशन सोचे, पाकिस्तान पे थाउजेंड ऑफ अटैक हुए लेकिन हमने कल्प्रिट्स पकड़ लिए। तो क्या इसका मतलब है कि इफेक्ट तो नहीं उस तरह हो सका जैसे वो चाहते थे? तो अगर हम कनाडा की पोजीशन देखें और अफ्रीकन यूनियन की, यूरोपियन यूनियन की, देन दैट वे दैट वाज नॉट एन अटैक अंडर आर्टिकल 24 द UN चार्टर। एंड US एंड UK तो कहते हैं कि ऑलमोस्ट यू नीड टू हैव सम सॉर्ट ऑफ इंजरी और डेथ और डिस्ट्रक्शन टू क्वालिफाई यूज ऑफ फोर्स अंडर आर्टिकल 24. Pakistan again has no position, and interestingly, China also doesn't have public position on these things, at least जो databases available हैं internationally. And then the right of self-defense, national security सारी self-defense पे खड़ी है, but what will invoke what will trigger the right of self-defense? It is inherent right of self-defense, लेकिन वो क्या हो जाएगा? तो UK is an interesting position. UK कहता है कि imminent attack का threat भी हो जो और जिसका effect kinetic attack के बराबर का हो scale and effect में, तो हमारा right of self-defense वो हो जाएगा। US इसमें आउटलायर है और वो कहता है कि एनी एक्चुअल और इमिनेंट इलीगल यूज ऑफ फोर्स, वो कहता है वो 24 को क्वालिफाई तो नहीं करता, पर हमारा राइट ऑफ सेल्फ डिफेंस ट्रिगर कर जाता है, हम वो कर सकते हैं। पर EU और मेजॉरिटी ऑफ द अदर इनसिग्निफिकेंट कंट्रीज बिलीव दैट यू नो अंटिल अनलेस अ ग्रेव साइबर ऑपरेशन जिसमें दैट कैन ओनली ट्रिगर राइट ऑफ सेल्फ डिफेंस, एंड दैट्स व्हाई आपको पता है NATO कंट्रीज एक्सेप्ट अमेरिका हैज सपोर्टेड अल्बानिया जब उस पर अटैक हुआ। तो लेकिन इस पे क्वालिफायर है, क्वालिफायर ये है कि इवन व्हेन यू हैव राइट ऑफ सेल्फ डिफेंस, जो UK और US की पोजीशन नहीं है, वो ये कहते हैं अगर आपने सेल्फ डिफेंस करना भी है तो उस पर नेसेसिटी और प्रोपोर्शनैलिटी का ख्याल रखना। ये नहीं कि किसी ने एक बेचारे ने हैकिंग किया और आपने उसके पूरा मुल्क तबाह कर दिया, दैट्स नॉट हाउ इट विल वर्क, बट यू नो प्रैक्टिकली यही होता है। इस पे मैं अभी इस बात पे जा ही नहीं रही कि अगर साइबर अटैक हुआ तो आप उस पर साइबर अटैक का ही जवाब देंगे या साइबर अटैक का जवाब आप काइनेटिक एक्शन से भी दे सकते हैं, बट दैट्स ऑल्सो अ डिबेट इन इंटरनेशनल लॉ। एंड देन देयर इज वन थिंग दैट आई जस्ट कांट गेट माई हेड अराउंड इज ड्यू डिलिजेंस। एवरीबडी इज टॉकिंग अबाउट कि ड्यू डिलिजेंस का राइट है और वो हमें हर स्टेट की रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी है कि वो अपना भी प्रोटेक्ट करे और दूसरों लोगों का भी अटैक प्रोटेक्ट करे, पाकिस्तान ने भी इसकी एक्सेप्ट किया है इस पोजीशन को कि ड्यू डिलिजेंस का नाम नहीं लिया, लेकिन वो 11 जो प्रिंसिपल्स हैं उनको किया है. Why we have taken on this responsibility? Countries are saying that this is not binding and we do not have the capacity, and this is not a general principle. जो पाकिस्तान की capacity है due diligence की, क्या वो equal है कि जो चाइना की है और US की है? So why we are saying कि हमारी वही equal responsibility होगी अगर हमारे मुल्क के अंदर से कोई attack start होता है from non-state actors against anybody else. So New Zealand, UK, Canada, most of the countries believe that's a non-binding and voluntary nature का है due diligence का. Due diligence means that you will not allow your territory to be used against any other country. US also believes it's a non-binding, but वो कहते हैं कि अगर आपको कोई inform करे कि आपकी territory use हो रही है cyber के लिए, तो आप पे फिर responsibility है to act upon it. And then, you know, as I said, a lot of countries say that due diligence का standard जो है that depends primarily for prevention and not for not for prevention but for actual अगर कुछ हो जाता है तो आप उस पे तब आपकी responsibility आती है to stop it. And then there's a element of caution की बात आती है. International law में ये principles हैं, लेकिन cyber पे ये बात करते हुए is conflicting. I wanted to talk about IHL, but generally मैं आपको सिंपल बता देती हूँ कि IHL के जो प्रिंसिपल्स हैं इंटरनेशनल लॉ में वो ये कहते हैं, और ये आपको पता है ICRC ड्राइव करती है इस ड्राइव को, दैट यू नो IHL अप्लाई जो जैसा भी है फुली वो अप्लाई करता है टू साइबर. एंड द कोर्ट ICJ's एडवाइजरी ओपिनियन के जब उन्होंने न्यूक्लियर वेपन की एडवाइजरी ओपिनियन दे रहे थे तो उन्होंने कहा था कि जो IHL के प्रिंसिपल्स हैं, इंटरनेशनल ह्यूमैनिटेरियन लॉ के प्रिंसिपल है जो आर्म कॉन्फ्लिक्ट पे अप्लाई करते हैं, दे अप्लाई to the future conflicts, future weapons also, because the idea was to cover all sort of weapons and all sort of armed conflict. But then the point is that it's easier said than done because attribution ही clear नहीं है international cyber space पे, तो ये सब कुछ करना मुश्किल होता है. And interestingly, IHL का जो concept of attack होता है, international humanitarian law का और public international law का concept of attack होता है, वो different होता है. So in ICRC driven IHL believes that, you know, it's not just the physical injury but also अगर functionality of a cyber equipment वगैरह attack हो जाए तो वो भी आपका that is also sort of attack, and which is IHL attack, not UN Charter or the use of force attack. प्रॉब्लम क्या है? प्रॉब्लम ये है कि हम ये इंटरनेशनल लॉयर्स और जो पॉलिसी मेकर्स हैं और लॉयर्स हैं वो समझ नहीं पा रहे हैं. देयर इज अ इनहेरेंट डिफरेंस इन लेट्स से न्यूक्लियर रजीम में. एक न्यूक्लियर वेपन था, कुछ कंट्री थे और हमें सेंट्रलाइज डिसीजन मेकिंग थी, हमने एक्सपोर्ट कंट्रोल कर दिए, चीज़ें कर दी, हमें पता था कि कैसे हो रहा है. पर यहाँ पे टेक्नोलॉजी बहुत जल्दी इवॉल्व करी है. हमें सिर्फ किसी मुल्कों के साथ इंगेज नहीं करना, हमें इंडिविजुअल के साथ इंगेज करना है, कंपनी के साथ इंगेज करना है. द डिसेंट्रलाइज नेचर इज मेकिंग इट डिफिकल्ट फॉर मी. एंड द सेकंड थिंग इज वी आर मेकिंग लॉस प्रीएम्प्टिवली बिकॉज टेक्नोलॉजी इवॉल्व करी. तो हम कह रहे हैं कि, और ये आप देखें टैलेंट मैनुअल वगैरह क्या करते हैं कि वो सोचते हैं कि अगर ऐसा हुआ तो हम क्या करेंगे. और ये हुआ है. इससे पहले लोग इसको कंपेयर करते हैं जब एविएशन की रजीम बनी थी. सो एविएशन रजीम ऑल्सो was made when aviation was in early stages. So Americans believe that, you know, the outer space और aviation में जो difference आया वो ये आया कि वो conservative बन की ज़्यादा aviation regime, because, you know, we were just thinking about the possibilities and we start making, and you know, and academics have this habit of being more conservative, and you know, policymakers are more out there brash, you know, sorry, but practitioners are like, you know, practically उनको जो जैसे अपना काम करना हो. There's another problem with the international regime is that a lot of experts, at least, they want to portray what law should be as what law is. Law जो अभी present करता है वो apply बहुत सारी चीजें जो हैं वो vague हैं, sovereignty and territorial integrity, सब बातें जो हैं ये vague बातें. So a lot of people trying to portray, especially some international organization trying to portray that, you know, the ideal चीजें जो हैं उनको कर रहे हैं, and automatically apply करना चीज़ों को वो confusion का होता है. This is something that I want to tell you about Pakistan. पाकिस्तान की जो स्टेटमेंट हमने की वो बहुत अच्छा स्टार्टिंग पॉइंट है. ये कस्टमरी तारीफ है जो मैंने कर दी है. उसके बाद जो उसमें कोर प्रिंसिपल्स की हमने बात की, तो आपको उससे बताना चाहती हूँ कि पाकिस्तान ने वही गलती की है जब उसने कहा कि कोर प्रिंसिपल अप्लाई करते एज दे डू इन द फिजिकल वर्ल्ड. तो प्रॉब्लम ये है कि पाकिस्तान के पॉलिसी मेकर्स ये समझ नहीं पाते हैं कि एज दे डू फिजिकल वर्ल्ड तो अप्लाई करें राइट ऑफ सिविल डिफेंस वैसे ही. फिर आपको करना चाहिए तो लाहौर के जवाब में अटैक का जवाब दे देते, जंग कर देते, फिर अगर आपने वैसे सोचा था जैसे फिजिकल वर्ल्ड में होता है. एंड देन दिस ये फिर भी अच्छी बात है, बट यू नो दे सेड दिस कॉमन हेरिटेज ऑफ मैनकाइंड। कॉमन हेरिटेज ऑफ मैनकाइंड कंपनीज ने बनाया है इंटरनेट, किसी एक मुल्क की फौज ने बनाई है, कोई चीज ऐप बनाई है, चीजें की है, और उसको आप कॉमन हेरिटेज ऑफ मैनकाइंड, व्हाट इज आवर कंट्रीब्यूशन यू नो टू द इंटरनेट, और a lot of countries contribution to internet, and then Pakistan calls for complete ban on offensive cyber weapons. I mean, this is an idealistic position that has nothing to do with the practical policy making, but एंड देन पाकिस्तान ने साइबर अटैक को डिफाइन किया है और कहा है कि इसको डेफिनेशन क्लियर नहीं है, पर कम से कम ये चार चीजें उन्होंने कही, ये तो आउटलॉ होनी चाहिए एज साइबर अटैक। दे सेड एनी अटेम्प्ट टू डिलीट, डिस्ट्रॉय और मैनिपुलेट। सो अटेम्प्ट यानी पाकिस्तान, तो अभी आप सोचें कि अगर आप फौजी हैं और आप को प्रैक्टिकली ये करना है और आप सोच रहे हैं कि मैं तो अटेम्प्ट भी कर, तो मेरा मुल्क खुद कह रहा है कि ये तो अटैक और उस पर पूरी की जंग जो है ना वो लग जानी चाहिए, या हमारे मुल्क के अंदर से कोई नॉन स्टेट ग्रुप करे ये, क्योंकि साइबर तो कर सकता है ना वो, और हम इंडिया कहेगा ये तो आपकी स्टेटेड पोजीशन है, या कोई भी नेबरिंग कंट्री या कोई भी कह सकता है कि तो आपकी स्टेटेड पोजीशन है कि दिस अमाउंट्स ऑन अटैक, तो दिस इज पाकिस्तान ऑफिशियल पोजीशन सबमिटेड टू द यूएन। सो वी डिडंट टॉक अबाउट ह्यूमन राइट्स, वी डिडंट टॉक अबाउट द गवर्नेंस, जरूरत भी नहीं थी। ड्यू डिलिजेंस पे पाकिस्तान ने, मैंने आपको बता चुकी हूँ, बात की है, काउंटर मेजर्स पे बात नहीं की है। मेरा जाती ख्याल ये, मैंने अपने दोस्तों को मोफा में ये बोला भी है कि यू आर टू मच influenced by international organization. They denied it, but you just Google any paragraph from their statement and you will find out which organization I'm talking about. You will find it on internet. मैं नाम भी ले लेती क्योंकि मैंने उसके लिए काम किया और मुझे मालूम है how the effect. पाकिस्तान की स्टेट प्रैक्टिस अदर देन स्टेटमेंट, लास्ट पॉसिबल स्लाइड जो है, पाकिस्तान के अंदर देयर इज अ लैक ऑफ प्रोग्रेसिव लेजिस्लेशन। सेक्रेटरी आईटी बैठे हुए उठा के फेंक सकते हैं मुझे बाहर, बट थैंक गॉड आई एम टू हैवी टू फॉर हिम टू डू दैट। सो बट स्टेट प्रैक्टिस पाकिस्तान की बिल्कुल भी प्रोग्रेसिव नहीं है, और मैं आपको बताती हूँ कि क्यों इंपॉर्टेंट है। मैं पिक अप क्रिटिसिज्म एक्चुअली करना नहीं चाहती थी, बट लॉट ऑफ फ्रेंड्स सजेस्टेड दैट यू हैव टू टॉक अबाउट इट। इट्स मोस्टली इनवर्ड लुकिंग। हम अपने मुल्क के अंदर जो हालात है उनको कंट्रोल करना चाहते हैं। इट्स नॉट अबाउट हाउ the cyber warfare or things like these are not mentioned even in that particular thing. And then पाकिस्तान की एक बहुत इंटरेस्टिंग बात मैंने देखी, वो जब अनऑथराइज एक्सेस की इंफॉर्मेशन की बात करता है तो कहते हैं डिसऑनेस्ट इंटेंट के साथ होना चाहिए। एंड वी हैव सीन स्टेट प्रैक्टिस क्या कह रही है, ज्यादातर मुल्क क्या कह रहे हैं कि अगर आपने एक्सेस कर भी लिया विदाउट डैमेजिंग एनीथिंग, so you are almost attacking another country, and हम कह रहे हैं कि जब तक dishonest intent नहीं होगी, which is fine for the domestic purposes, but you know think about that any country attacking another country will never have an honest sort of intent. And then cyber में there is a cyber terrorism की बात है जिसमें कहते हैं if anything that makes government insecure, अभी गवर्नमेंट को इनसिक्योर करने के लिए टेररिज्म की जरूरत नहीं पड़ती है, बट बहरहाल दिस इज अ डेफिनेशन दैट यू नो वी हैव गिवन, एंड देन कॉजन का लिखा है, और आई डोंट नो हाउ टू डिफाइन दिस, एंड वो हमारे लॉज में नहीं होते, कोर्ट्स विल डिफाइन इट हाउ इट विल बी। बट मैं सिर्फ एक बात ये कहना चाहती हूँ कि आप जो करना चाहते हैं, यू नो सोवरेनिटी, वेरी मिसलीडिंग टर्म, but there are international obligation and we have to be mindful of what we are contributing to state practice. So state practice वो नहीं होती है सिर्फ जो statement आपने UN में दे दी है। state practice वो भी होती है जो आप अपने laws बनाते हैं, जो आपके ministers बात करते हैं, ये सब कुछ कोर्ट होता है, ये सब कुछ। और जब खास तौर पे when you are weak, तो आप सोचें कि आप, so you know you're making your own difficult things difficult for yourself. And then we have a cyber security policies, secretary साहब ने कहा था कि साइबर सिक्योरिटी पॉलिसी है पाकिस्तान में, और वो कहती है कि साइबर अटैक क्रिटिकल इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर में एक्ट ऑफ एग्रेशन होगा और पाकिस्तान इसको अप्रोप्रिएट रिस्पॉन्स देगा। सो आई डोंट नो व्हाट वो कौन सा वाला होगा जिस पे हम करेंगे, बिकॉज एवरीथिंग हैज बीन अटैक्ड, बट वो नहीं। एंड वी विल हैव अ रेसिप्रोकल रिस्पेक्ट फॉर नेशनल डिजिटल सोवरेनिटी, दैट मीन्स दैट यू नो वी विल अटैक इफ अटैक्ड. There is a thing that national security policy talked about, and I want you to think about your statement, your cyber policy, and your national security policy. Clearly, अगर आप तीनों को एक साथ पढ़े, जैसे मैंने इस वीकेंड पे जब उनको बहुत दफा I went through, and ऐसे एक साफ पता चलता है किसी भी बंदे को कि ये जब लिखते हुए किसी ने एक दूसरे से बात नहीं की है। So territorial integrity को define किया है not only land, sea and but also as a cyber and space domains. So we already have defined those goals that you know हमारी जो territorial integrity है उसमें और हमने कहा है कि हम build करेंगे robust cyber capabilities. As सुहेल साहब ने कहा था corporation. So whole of nation की बात होती है. Even if you're somebody at home, वो vulnerable है, उसकी security sure नहीं हो सकती, आपका पूरा network, it can bring the whole network down. So जब तक it's not a whole of government, it's not the stakeholders consultation and thing, it has to be whole of nation. You have to. Estonia is a great example. जब उनके मुल्क पे अटैक हुआ तो उन्होंने adult digital literacy programs start किए थे, so that older people, जैसे मैम कह रही थी कि higher ups don't have an interest, so everybody has to take interest. हमारे यहाँ तो secretaries है, वो उनका staff उनको they don't know how to operate most of the digital devices. So hybrid threats जो है उसके लिए holistic, this is what your national security policy is saying, holistic, interconnected, whole of nation approach. I think we should do something more than saying these words. Lastly, I've said this before, इंटरनेशनल ह्यूमन राइट्स ऑब्लिगेशन, जो कि साइबर के लिए जैसे भी हो, वो प्राइवेसी लॉज हो, चाहे वो आपके फ्रीडम ऑफ एक्सप्रेशन है, फ्रीडम ऑफ असेंबली है, वो or access to internet itself, all these are international obligation and Pakistan has to fulfill this. And then CBMs की बात की, and सुहेल साहब ने बात की, मैं बहुत interesting है, मैं सिर्फ एक बात कहना चाहती हूँ. While working with the government of Pakistan, I know that international organizations trying hard, so some sort of CBMs between India and Pakistan and the regional level, and I don't want to take names, but the regional head of that organization said that the older institution in the both countries, the same institutions on the both sides of the border is against CBMs. And the newer institutions on the both sides of the organization of the border are for CBMs. So abhi Sohail साहब कह रहे हैं कि CBMs होने चाहिए, तो I hope that this will translate into the actual policy. और ये actually important है. It could lead to bigger disaster, something like जो Albania में बच गया और लाहौर में बच गया. Thank you so much, and apologies for everything that I have said.
Thank you, Dr. Sadia, for raising very critical questions. And I hope during the question answer session, since Secretary Saab is here, we'll have an interesting discussion and debate on these questions and points. Ladies and gentlemen, our last speaker for today is Mr. Javed Iqbal. Unfortunately, Mr. Javed Iqbal was trying to be physically present here, but he got his flight cancelled from Karachi, and so he's joining us online. He's a distinguished technology executive with extensive experience driving transformative change for Fortune 500 companies and governors across North America, Europe, and Asia. Currently a member at the Special Technology Zone Authority, he has held senior roles in Salesforce, EYC, and PwC, and co-founded TransformX, a global consultancy specializing in digital transformation. Mr. Javed Iqbal has expertise in digital strategy, customer experience, national security implications of emerging technologies. He will be speaking on cyber threat landscape and readiness imperatives for Pakistan. Sir, you have the floor now.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you, everybody. Can you hear me?
Ji, please go ahead.
Shukriya. Respected Ambassador Saab, Secretary Saab, Dr. Marine, Air Marshal Saab, Dr. Sadia, and friends and colleagues, Assalamu alaikum. Apologize, my flight got cancelled, as was just said. I wish I was there in person. But before we begin, the beauty of being the last of the program, especially someone to follow Dr. Sadia, as well as enough has been said, and the onus is on me to come up with something new, which should be interesting, but I will try to give it a little more spin that is outside the realm of what has been said already. So I think a lot's been already talked about in terms of what this threat landscape is evolving. I mean, this is no longer just, the digital threat is starting to become the physical threat as well, because it's starting to connect with the interplay as well. Imagine the chaos and the disruption and the vulnerability that's happening when our critical systems are compromised, which is the big thing now. It's no longer a hypothetical scenario. It is very real threat for Pakistan in the digital domain as well. In fact, one of the things that I'm glad no one touched upon, I'd like to go a little deeper on as well in this few minutes that I have, is how AI is now being the most powerful tool that is being used to amplify these cyber threats as well, making our response a lot more urgent and much needed as well. I will talk about not only the ways to strengthen these cyber defenses today, but also a matter of technical security, and especially about a strategic and nuclear security, which is increasingly vulnerable on the AI side as well. So what's the overall landscape? I think enough's been said. It's a very complex situation with Pakistan, the ever evolving and increasingly sophisticated landscape threat with vis-a-vis the innovations that are coming through, the technologies that are evolving, etc. It's no longer about the individual hackers, as Dr. Sadi also alluded to as well, or isolated attacks. It's about the very large-scale, state-sponsored, well-coordinated, as well as operations that are used AI to enhance their impact as well. I think we need to take a step back and holistically look at all the actors that are not only looking at things against us, but also how do we look at these cybercrime syndicates that are leveraging machine learning algorithms for ransomware attacks, foreign adversaries deploying AI to breach our military networks, and then, growing the risks exponentially. If you look at how some of the state-owned enterprises have also been attacked in the past, I mean, the 2021 attack on National Bank of Pakistan wasn't just a simple hack. It was these AI algorithms we used to automate, find vulnerabilities, exploit them at unprecedented scale, and then impacting, our citizens nationwide as well. Similar things continue to happen with FBR and NADRA as well, which manage very, very sensitive citizen information. And I think a lot of this already, unfortunately, is out there in the dark web, but we need to start seeing, as we're building these, cementing these national assets, how are we building cybersecurity in the core foundation of each of these domains, so that AI tools that are used to predict these weaknesses, that automate some of these phishing attacks as well, and even analyze those types of databases that look at the vulnerability and target at a time like this as well, or also look at. And then, we also need to start looking at how, especially with cloud being, getting bigger in our country as well, how is the industrial scale of this, where our data is housed, the sovereignty of our knowledge and data, etc., our frameworks, our domains, our regulations is protected more on the privacy concern part as well. This domain is as much a national security piece as anything else. I mean, if you look at how these disruptions are looking at putting more holds on our strategic assets, including the nuclear one, cannot be underestimated. The advanced persistent threats, the APTs, are also leveraging AI now to carry out these prolonged attacks. So I think another thing to look at, and something Dr. Sadi also alluded to, we're not looking at isolated ones, but we're also looking at the ones that are just continuously prolonging as well, where are the military communications, the intelligence network, etc., get compromised, and then these attack patterns that these systems learn, they adapt very quickly and evade any traditional cybersecurity defenses as well. So something to look at, as these simulate AI algorithms on our defense systems, the vulnerabilities, etc., as well. The AI-driven cyber attacks also are starting to look at the early warning systems we have that protect a lot of things. They generate false alert. Another something we need to start looking at very, very, very closely in terms of what does that mean? What does the miscalculation mean especially in the strategic domain? And then by compromising some of these arms control verification systems, these adversaries are also tampering with data to undermine international agreements and then destabilizing the nation. I mean, there was some talk about talk about nation states, the regional blocks, etc., with the new sort of world order forming. How are we looking at the foundational element and then integrating this? How we're looking at the various policies and how they sort of flow in the right direction around this as well. I think that's extremely essential as well. In addition to this, disinformation campaigns that are powered by AI as well, that are now spreading on very similar types of domains on social media, as well as traditional electronic and regular print media as well. How are they alluding or adding to some of these cyber domains, and then that creates that damages the public trust, that creates a lot of social unrest. It fuels panic and then further jeopardizes national security. So something to look at. And then lastly, in this piece, I'd say, if you look at how phishing attacks are becoming more sophisticated as well, hackers are now analyzing public data and predicting individuals. I think these behaviors, the way they're targeting information that's out there on the social media realm, looking at overall public data and making inference between the various types of known and unknown data, and then adding an algorithmic insertions into whatever is needed as well. That's another aspect of breaching and securing government networks as well. So it's a challenge overall. The good news is we do have some agencies, certain organizations that are looking at this. Dr. Sadia talked about the PARC-CERT, excellent opportunity to sort of combine that with how FIA, the cyber wing of FIA, as well as Ministry of IT and some of the others are doing it. And the SPD is helping out with this. STZA, the organization that I'm part of, is actively looking at developing infrastructure that is secure. And then obviously the National Response Center for Cybercrime is also working on these defenses. I think it's idea for like all organization conference to look at what are the learnings, and then kind of coming up with a larger set. Which leads me to the last part. What are the 4 or 5 things that we should do as an action item? I think first we need to figure out what a robust AI-enabled national cybersecurity strategy is, and that should factor in not only what was discussed today, but also any other pieces of learnings that the public has, the institutions have, as well as academics have as well in this realm as well. Secondly, we need AI-enabled capacity building. I think the innovation pie, we have a lot of focus, and Secretary Saab is here as well. We have a lot of focus on making sure that our exports grow, our infrastructure goes, etc. But I think equally important is how are we safeguarding this growth of export, safeguarding the growth of infrastructure, digital and physical. I think that's extremely important, especially now that it's AI-driven as well. Critical infrastructure as the third point is extremely important. We must implement these monitoring systems, especially for energy grids, telecommunications, and nuclear facilities as well. The attack on each of these basic things that affect the citizens become a challenge as well. A comprehensive legal and regulatory framework that I alluded to earlier as well, which addresses AI-driven cyber crimes. I know some work has already been done by CERT, Ministry of IT, and others as well. I think a little more coordinated effort in our national cyber incident response team that sort of is not only related to the national security, but also the security of our public and the enablement and growth of our business. Fifth is a public-private partnership piece. We need to start working closer with the friendly nations. Saudi is a leading example. UAE is a leading example in the region that are already putting a lot of this to work. I think we need a closer partnership. We're already working on a plan with the Digital Cooperation Organization, Secretary Saab. I think cyber should be also part of that domain, as well as we build in the entire digital transformation part on this. And then finally, we must also focus on combating this disinformation, that campaign that comes out of left field from another part of the world or outside of the country, or even within the country, some of the non-state actors that invoke some of the non-friendlies in there as well. And this spear phishing, which increasingly leverages AI to predict personal information as well, can be a harm to our citizens as well as the government machinery as well. So in conclusion, I think a lot's been said. Cybersecurity is not just a technical issue. I think someone else said that earlier as well. It's a matter of national security. I think the threats we face, especially with AI, are massive. And I think, it's time to commit to proactive action rather than a very reactive one. We need to heighten our vigilance as everybody else is doing as well, and look at it as more of a shared responsibility for securing our nation in this digital age as well. I think the future of the country is very dependent on the stability of the region. And the more we are growing the economy, looking at the 160 million youth bulge to enable and be part of this economy, looking at the over 250 million population, how do we make sure that they are secure and as they digitize themselves into better living, better economic prosperity, and better national security? I think it's imperative to look at cybersecurity as almost as a national emergency and take things forward. With that, I thank ISSI again for the time and look forward to meeting you all in the person, inshallah, very soon. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you, Javed Iqbal sir. I thank you all the speakers for giving us a very comprehensive presentation on the subject. Now it's time for the interactive discussion, question and answer session. And I believe there are already some questions raised by Dr. Sadia, and I would like to invite the participants, if they want to raise any question, please raise their hand and kindly identify themselves and be precise in their question. Banoori Saab, sir, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. My name is Khalid Banoori. I'm a former Director General of Arms Control Disarmament Affairs at SPD. I also have a bit of an interest in international law, which is a subject that I teach from the lens of international relations. This is a fascinating discussion, and I hope the Institute of Strategic Studies will pursue with this to take it forward into more focus group discussions, because there are several questions that are being raised. What I heard was several presentations full of some concerns, at least one very provocative. All are needed. All need to look at these aspects which are being put on the table. If the chair allows, I have some very, very brief questions or comments on this, on the kind of from each speaker. Zarar Saab, I believe I met you somewhere socially, but we didn't get to see this. You spoke extempore. That actually shakes this up. Bureaucrats ka tarika nahi hai, which is a great thing and it's much appreciated. My short question to you would have been, is there a mechanism for futuristic threat assessment? Because that's, if the Ministry of IT or elsewhere or think tanks can establish this, there's a need to actually go into this as a process. That's one thing that I would, and Marshal Zahid, we go back a long time, and I am always fascinated with how you look at this. My takeaway from you is that cybersecurity will never be an end state, but will remain a process, which is understandable. So the slips of the leaks that will happen when the firewalls start to become inadequate and next ones are being developed, what happens then? How much of national security is that sensitive, where you really isolate systems and so on and so forth? So that's an area to perhaps I would think about from your presentation. Marine, I think one question that came to my mind on that was, and I'm thinking of the EU Disinformation Lab example. In that backdrop, are there any is there a future study? Are there कोई response या investigation का process that your institution is looking at to set up a mechanism? And you'll notice that I'm looking at the processes that can happen. And the challenges, you did mention some, but one question that comes to mind is how appropriate or prudent would be to actually think of public-private partnerships on finding solutions, because there's a lot of, I mean, we have a Secretary IT who comes from the public sector, and which is to me is a welcome move. Is there more space for doing setting up mechanisms? I would a brief comment on Javed Saab's thing. So the subject, obviously, when you bring in artificial intelligence, it's already very, very complex. So any mechanism to research, focus it from the lens of cybersecurity, does it exist? Because to my understanding, it requires a multidisciplinary approach, very, very different experiences. Also, while we look at these, it's good to look at it from the national security lens, but they can be below that threshold several problems like chaos prevention, chaos which makes people's lives uncomfortable, but not necessarily is a threat to national security. What do we do then, and where to find? Sadia, I was hoping you will say all these things, and you did. There are several things. It was a bit racy, so I have to think more about it. एक दो चीजें हैं that I thought that I will leave these two questions with you. One is on these individual threats, can ICC be invoked? Is there a possibility? Do the rules allow this for individuals? That's one area. Second thing, and I'm thinking of the US Nicaragua example of the collective self-defense. What if a state says, request me and I'll go all out to your support? Are there pitfalls there, and what do we do? You said something about effect and scale. Effect, I understand completely. Scale is a bit fuzzy by itself, and that could be a challenge more than an opportunity. Do you think that there's more thoughts that we can think of? And one perhaps comment on what you said was deliberate attacks are understandable, but even if there's an incident that happens, there's so much of social media, there's so much of interest, there's so much of information that quickly starts to flow that enhanced traffic will also jam all channels. Is there a way to deal with both situations where the internet performance becomes inadequate for other reasons than the incident itself? So I apologize for taking that long, but these are some thoughts that come to my mind. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Munir sir. I believe we have a quite good number of questions. So I'll request Secretary Saab to respond to this question.
Thank you, Munir sir. So you were asking about the threat assessment process. So we have so we have different layers. So one of the things that we really want to see is that when we are taking a holistic approach, from a law and regulatory perspective, do we have adequate laws that first give the responsibility to a institution to do an activity, and is that activity really quantified? Because right now, one of the challenges that we have seen specifically in the cybersecurity domain per se is, where does it lie? I mean, does it lie as a part of our national security domain from a perspective of rule of business, where it is Ministry of Defense area? Does it lie as a part of crime, where it is the Ministry of Interior focus area? Or is it a pure technology domain where Ministry of IT comes in? So I think what we are looking at and what we are also focusing at is that, we first need to have clarity in terms of, legislative and regulatory domain. And this is an area where we have started to work over the last couple of months, because we need to have a very holistic approach when we are talking about, the cyber domain and the security of the cyber domain. The next thing, I think, when you're trying to take it into an actionable sort of an area, the first thing is, what exactly are we trying to protect? And can we give relative importance, or is there be that, can we provide a scale of how important certain thing is? Because, you know, from our side, let's say somebody taking over a WhatsApp number of somebody equivalent to leakage of data. So I think under one of the activities that the Ministry of IT is doing through NCERT and the other bodies is to define critical infrastructure. So critical information and critical infrastructure, because once your resources are limited and you're starting at ground zero, what you need to focus on is what are the things that are important. So we have started to designate infrastructure and information as critical so that a more focus can be given to that. The third thing is that, of course, when you have a holistic approach, whether a whole of government approach or a whole of nation approach, you need to focus on three prongs of deployment, which is very standard: people, processes, and tools. I think more often than not, the weakest link whenever there is any issue when it comes to cybersecurity is the people, and then followed by processes. Tools are compromised only when nation states get involved, you know, like especially at a higher level. So from a people, processes, and tools perspective, we really need to know that how are we communicating with all the stakeholders, whether they are in the public sector or in the private sector? How are we having training paradigms that are being set up? And how are we having very, very simple mechanisms whose adoption is very simple, but you know, they provide a higher degree of security, which at this particular time, unfortunately, may be missing. And I think finally, I would say that cybersecurity or effective cybersecurity is not something that can be done in isolation. A lot of people have tried it and it doesn't happen, whether it is at a G2G level or even at an institutional level or at an individual level. Collaborative approach is very important. And what we are doing is that with all the other relative international bodies, let's take, for example, NCERT. So, you know, we are now focusing on developing collaboration so that we are not relying on our internal intellectual capabilities and our internal understanding. We are also collaborating on it from that perspective. Having said that, I think if you see where we are standing today, there is a lot of ground that needs to be covered, and across all elements, whether it is the implementation of systems, development of processes, or even regulations and policies. But the understanding, I think, is there, and the realization is there. And what has happened over the last 18 months globally, I think that has brought us to the stark realization that, you know, the threat is very imminent, and we need to have an action bias to execute that threat.
Thank you, sir. Dr. Marine.
Your question was about public private relationship और वो सारा कुछ जैसे सर ने कहा, मैं इस चीज़ को बिल्कुल इंडोर्स करूँगी कि जो साइबर सिक्योरिटी या साइबर जो थ्रेट है आज का, वो आइसोलेशन में नहीं हम देख सकते. और अगर हम एक एग्जांपल अभी प्राइवेसी ही की ले लें, तो अभी हमारे पास सबसे बहुत ज़्यादा जो एक कॉमनली वेल नोन चीज़ आती है वो ये कि डार्क वेब पे बहुत सारा पाकिस्तानियों का डाटा पड़ा हुआ है, और ये बहुत एक वो भी बनती है, न्यूज़ भी बनती है और इसके ऊपर. एंड इट्स नॉट ओनली फ्रॉम द पब्लिक डोमेन बट आल्सो फ्रॉम द प्राइवेट डोमेन. एक होटल है जहाँ पर के बहुत सारे लोग आके रुक रहे हैं और हम बिलावजह उनके आईडी कार्ड्स की कॉपीज़ अपने पास रखी जा रहे हैं और वो किसी भी वक्त में एक्सपोज हो जाते हैं और वो डाटा जो है लीक हो जाता है. सो प्राइवेट जो एंटिटीज़ हैं उनको इंगेज करना फॉर द साइबर सिक्योरिटी इज़ वेरी वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट, स्पेशली फॉर द डाटा प्रोटेक्शन. जब हम डाटा प्रोटेक्शन की बात करें, बिकॉज इफ दे लॉस, अगर उनका कोई ऐसा लॉस होता है जिसमें उनका सिर्फ फाइनेंशियल लॉस हो रहा हो, तो दैट माइट नॉट बी एनी गवर्नमेंट प्रॉब्लम. लेकिन अगर जब वहाँ पर सिटीजन्स का डाटा लॉस हो रहा है, तो वो फिर इट बिकम्स द स्टेट्स प्रॉब्लम. सो दैट इज़ वाई ये एक बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट एस्पेक्ट है. और इसके लिए एक तो लाजमी चीज़ रेगुलेशंस हैं। जब तक कोई रेगुलेशन नहीं होती उस वक्त तक हम उनको किसी भी तरह से बाउंड नहीं कर सकते कि आपने कैसे प्रोटेक्ट करना है उस डाटा को जो कि आप कलेक्ट करें फॉर एनी रीज़न, और फिर वो उस रीज़न भी उनके पास जस्टिफिकेशन हो। लेकिन दूसरी चीज़ एक अवेयरनेस है और एक कैपेसिटी बिल्डिंग है उनकी, उसके लिए हम कंट्रीब्यूट कर रहे हैं और हम उसके लिए एफर्ट्स भी कर रहे हैं। लेकिन ये कि रेगुलेशंस आएंगी तो फिर ये चीज़ें होंगी, मगर दैट इज़ वेरी वेरी वेल पॉइंटेड आउट दैट पब्लिक एंड प्राइवेट बोथ हैव टू वर्क on this aspect.
वो जो इंडियन क्रॉनिकल की एग्जांपल थी उसकी रिकरेंस को, बिकॉज बहुत सारा काम हमारा इनवर्ड होता है ट्रूली, जो बाकी दुनिया में हो रहा है वो भी हमें इम्पैक्ट कर रहा है, उससे भी कुछ सोच है या नहीं आप?
नहीं, मैं नहीं समझ पाई।
इंडियन क्रॉनिकल्स ये EU डिसइंफॉर्मेशन लैब की एक स्टडी थी कि 15 साल तक द इंडियंस वर creating fake websites and
Okay.
creating using dead people to give impression. Basically चाइना को थ्रेट कर टारगेट कर रहे थे,
सही।
बट ऑल्सो पाकिस्तान।
सही। अच्छा, मेरा इसके ऊपर अपना शायद ज़ाती मेरा ओपिनियन ये है कि कुछ चीज़ें ऐसी हैं जिन्हें ना हम रोक नहीं सकेंगे। यानी ये जो आउटबर्स्ट ऑफ ये जो इतना आपके पास इंफॉर्मेशन है और जो AI बेस्ड बहुत सारी आपके पास इवन वीडियोस और ये सब जो चीज़ें, मुझे यूँ लगता है कि जैसे इनको रोकना बेवकूफ़ी है और उसके ऊपर बिला वजह हमें अपना बहुत सारा रिसोर्सेज नहीं वेस्ट करने चाहिए। वी हैव टू कम आउट विद द ट्रू थिंग्स, जो कि अगर जो सच होती है वो लाजमन ऊपर आ जाता है। यानी इफ़ समथिंग डिस इन्फॉर्मेशन या मिस इन्फॉर्मेशन की जो चीज़ें हैं वो अगर आपकी जो सही चीज़ है वो सॉलिड हो तो वो ऊपर आ जाती है खुद ब खुद। सो वी हैव टू डू द राइट थिंग्स इंस्टेड ऑफ ब्लॉकिंग थिंग्स, वी हैव टू डू द राइट थिंग्स इन दिस डायरेक्शन। मेरा इसके ऊपर ये ओपिनियन है।
Thank you. Zahid Saab.
Sir, as I understood your question, it was more technical in nature. If I use a terminology, when I look at it as a practitioner and a student, the future is kind of a very twilight zone kind of an affair. And in this cyber domain, when we say future, it doesn't mean 5 or 10 years. It means next year, next month. To give you an example, last week, Microsoft unveiled the first, I would say, miniaturized version of a quantum-enabled chip. So quantum computing was huge infrastructures, energy hungry, stuff like that. And we were thinking when it was unveiled that it will take about 5 years for it to get miniaturized to come to a desktop or a laptop. It has happened last week. Now imagine an actor, an offender, a criminal equipped with quantum-based hacking capability. All your existing firewalls will go out of the window. You mentioned leaks, it will be floodgates which will open. So the need of the hour is that we have to equip our defenders and the people who are responsible for the cybersecurity with matching technologies. So a quantum hacker would require a quantum-enabled defender. And you have to think way ahead. The future is not very bright for anybody, by the way.
Thank you. What do you like? Dr. Sadia.
सर रोम स्टैट्यूट ऑब्वियसली ICC एंड रोम स्टैट्यूट हमारे लिए तो है नहीं, वो हम तो वी आर नॉट सिग्नेटरीज। एग्जिस्टिंग रूल्स में क्राइम अगेंस्ट ह्यूमैनिटी के अंदर पीपल हैव ट्राइड उसको एक्सप्लेन करने के लिए साइबर वॉरफेयर को, इफ इट्स अ लार्ज स्केल। एंड आपका दूसरा क्वेश्चन भी इसके साथ ही, वो जो स्केल वाली बात है, वो अगर आप क्राइम अगेंस्ट ह्यूमैनिटी को देखें तो यू नो वन कंडीशन इज ईदर इट हैज टू बी लार्ज स्केल और यू नो प्लान, तो वो उसमें आता है स्केल, यानी इस लेवल पे वो चला जाए। इट्स नॉट अ वन आइसोलेटेड इंसिडेंट बट यू नो इट्स सच अ लार्ज स्केल दैट यू नो इट अफेक्टेड द स्टेट। कलेक्टिव सेल्फ डिफेंस की जब आपने बात की, बिल्कुल जो इस पे स्टेट की पोजीशंस एक्चुअली साइबर जो टूल किट है उसमें दे टॉक्ड अबाउट नॉट ओनली दिस जैसे ट्रेडिशनल वो होता है, बल्कि कैपेसिटी, क्योंकि अगर किसी मुल्क पर अटैक हुआ तो हो सकता है उसकी कैपेसिटी ना हो, तो वो अपने एलाइज को कह सकता है कि उसके बिहाफ पे जो है फिर वो उसको डिफेंड करें या काउंटर अटैक करें, काउंटर मेजर्स लें। सो बिल्कुल वो स्टेट, ज़्यादातर स्टेट्स की पोजीशन है कि कलेक्टिव सेल्फ डिफेंस अप्लाई करता है। परफॉर्मेंस ट्रैफिक की जब बात की until unless it's an attempt to slow down internet. If it naturally because of the traffic, it's not an issue. It has to be an action oriented thing, जिस पे आपको जो है international law trigger करेगा.
To this, not from this legal perspective, but from a technical perspective. The technical answer to this question is that once you are managing your traffic, the cyber traffic, I don't believe internet is cyber. Cyberspace is a much larger space than internet. So once you are managing your traffic centrally, then you have peacetime priorities already laid down. So when you are getting bogged down due to narrow bandwidth, the system automatically shuts down non-essential services. If there is a large-scale incident in the country where you need rescues and responders to reach there, and you need certain kind of bandwidth in terms of cyber, then the people who are managing, they already know what service to shut down. If at that time my YouTube is not working, doesn't matter in that area because the bandwidth is required somewhere else. So when you intelligently manage your traffic, you shut down your non-essential services and focus the bandwidth on people who require it.
Saying this process exists.
Javed Iqbal Saab, would you like to respond to these questions?
I completely echo. I think enough's been said around this. I think how we are looking at bringing it all together and not just this question. I think in large summation of things in terms of how ready we are, it's very important to understand that. Secondly, I think as Secretary Saab said, whose responsibility is this overall? And then last, what is critical and what is not critical? I think I'm completely aligned with more, collaborative approaches to solve some of these. And each individual challenges that we're trying to address that have come up with that questions are being asked around, I think are erupting because on a larger scale, we don't have that clarity in terms of how we want to approach the overall thing. So while I echoes everybody's comments, I think I just wanted to make this one larger summation around this as well. Thank you.
Thank you. So we'll have another round of questions, please.
Saraj, student of law. My question is with concern cyber crimes, and which is linked with national laws and international laws. So my particular question will be for the honorable listening to Mr. Secretary Saab and also all valued speakers. So my question is, sir, whenever there is any definition of cyber, to our valued agency, they misinterpret. They say there is involvement of an internet. No. Actually, one big law we have in our country, that is PICA. And in PICA, there is definition when there is usage of electromagnetic system, not the internet. Best example is SMS. In SMS, there is simple mobile, not even entertained by internet, no Apple, no Android, but we can send message, little message. So this is also cyber. So therefore, this is one aspect. They want whenever we have any filing of any complaint, so they say you go to normal police. This is cyber crime. And secondly, in international law, even it is the part of the section of our PICA. All agencies, especially the FIA, is legally bound to have the privilege of other international agencies. It is in a Peruvian section. And also we have Budapest Convention. That is also valid for us. Also, UN has passed a lot of cybercrime laws. So therefore, my humble submission is that for the safety of our valued, our citizens, there should be proper application of cyber laws and cyber to kill the cyber crimes. Thank you.
Please.
My name is Anis Ahmed. My question came, basically, we are living in the world of uncertainty as it is international order level or at individual level. But when it comes to this cyber crimes, basically in large, there are the two types. One, the social media crimes, and other is in the financial frauds, which has become the third growing economy after US and China. It has happened when we ourselves share our any information to anyone hacker like OTP related. But when it comes to social media crimes, so that has made us a kind of delusional to use or not. Why? Because let's take the example of the Facebook. A single person has many IDs, 10, 20, so many. So what to do to control this? There is any framework for our country level to communicate with the states who are the owners of these companies like Facebook or any other, to make any framework like framework, or to confine it with the CNIC, any person CNIC associate related, so that it can easy to identify. Because in November there was an incident, if you know about in Umarkot, any doctor Shahnawaz by named, he has an by his name there was in Facebook ID, and the blasphemy related material was shared and he was killed. Though last week there was a report issued by the investigative report by FIA on that. So what to do in that manner? What are the governments individuals for that? Thank you.
Thank you.
That's my question.
So,
I'm
last
Azam
question,
Mahdi,
please.
motivational speaker. My question by Madam Sadia. Yes, as you mentioned, Pakistan has considered the cybercrime a physical attack on the country. Has there any establishment of cyber security forces to protect the country, same like other military forces? One another by the Secretary Sahib as well. What type of responsibilities has been assigned to institutions and universities to play their role, to protect their country through well-trained and capable cyber security experts?
Thank you. Sorry, you.
So I think the first two questions were related to PICA. So what has happened is that the Ministry of Interior has actually come up with an amendments in the PICA Act, which was passed by the Parliament and enacted last month. Some of the, I think, amendments that were proposed by the Ministry of Interior tackled two particular areas. The first one was that what is going to be the process and what are the right bodies that are going to be setting it up. So, one of the challenges that comes in electronic crimes is the investigation and the prosecution part. And one challenge that was being felt over the last few years was that a lot of the prosecutions were not really resulting in convictions, even though when everybody knew something is right. Second thing where it was falling and the things needed to be strengthened was that what are the legislative mechanisms in order to access information? Like my other friend talked about identity misuse. So, there was an identity which was being misused. Now, if somebody needs to see that the result of that identity misuse was the death of somebody. If somebody wants to figure out that, how you need to do that, what are the legislative frameworks? So that was something that the Ministry of Interior brought under the PICA, which is predominantly a crime investigative sort of a focus act, as well as some regulatory regime when it comes to content. One thing we have to be very clear that, what makes internet so great is the free flow of information. The moment you try to basically change this very basic tenet of internet, then it starts to become very, very difficult. What we have to do is that nobody controls the internet. Internet evolved by its own through, education and research institutions getting connected, and now we are where we are. What we have to do is, to your question, that we have to first identify what are the potential threats. And the threats, I think Air Marshal Saab very clearly laid out that there are threats which are by nation state actors, and there are threats which are by probably bored individuals. And then there are other dimensions of those threats that are coming out. How are we going to protect about it? One thing that has done is that, Dr. Mehreen works in the National CERT. But National CERT is not the only CERT that is designated for Pakistan, because one body cannot really, either really, let's say, focus on the scale or in the cyber domain that we have. So what we have done is that there is, of course, the national CERT, which is the apex body for coordination. But then there are provincial certs as well. There are sectoral certs. So there is a cert which is going to be a financial sector cert, because when you're looking at, let's say, cyber security from a financial sector perspective, it is very, very difficult, very different from cyber security, let's say, of educational sector. When you're looking at cyber security of the defense sector, that would be quite different from cybersecurity of the telecom sector. So the overarching framework that of certs that has been set up is that you have the national certs, and then there are two domains. Then you will have the national certs, then the different government certs and the provincial certs, and then you have the national certs, and the other domain is the sectoral certs. And this all is being done in a very collaborative fashion, because we do not want that these things are done from a very heavy-handed top-down approach. The best practices of cybersecurity are very well established. I mean, I think they're established globally. What we really need to do is to adopt those best practices. And the frameworks that are being developed at the national cert levels, they need to be propagated up and down the entire country of Pakistan, because cybersecurity, as we all know, is finding the weakest link. And once you find the weak link and you're able to exploit it, then you know the challenges compound many folds.
Sir, Dr. Sadia.
First thing first, Budapest Convention is not applicable on Pakistan. If you are giving it a customary international law status, then it might be applicable, but otherwise we are not signatories. With regard to crimes, and I think nobody has said that internet is cyber. I think my first slide has a definition of it, but obviously I didn't want to be preachy. What constitutes a cyberspace, and I think nobody has said that. The third thing is about the cyber, the crime thing. I think what you have said, identity theft and everything, which is also related to the EU Chronicles, where they have created these accounts and identity of use identity of other people on social media and everything. I think international law basically, I think it's mentioned in somewhere in my slides also, and I think I've tried to focus on it, that all sort of human rights are applicable in cyber context also. So protection of your identity, your freedoms of expression, your financial freedoms, everything is protected as they're protected in real physical world. So there are international principles with regard to that, and very clear on that. Then there was a question about I think you were asking about, is there a physical force, a security force? If you are asking me, there is a battalion focus on it, but I know that there is a technical division within armed forces working on these issues. But I mean, we don't need, we need hackers and experts, and not the physical forges doing this for so I think yes, there is a technical division working on it with regard to everything from emerging technologies to AI to cyber, everything. Yes.
Thank you, Dr. Sadia. Ladies and gentlemen, with this, we'll now close the question and answer session. And I would now like to invite Ambassador Khalid Mahmood for his vote of thanks. Ambassador Khalid Mahmood is a former ambassador of Pakistan to Iran, Iraq, China, Saudi Arabia, and Mongolia. He has served as first secretary and later a deputy permanent representative of Pakistan to the UN and New York. He has worked as a DG UN and additional secretary UN Asia Pacific and Africa at MOFA. He is also former permanent representative of Pakistan to the OIC and ECO. Sir, you have the floor now, sir.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Honorable Chief Guest, Mr. Zarar Hashim Khan, Secretary, Information Technology, Director General ISSI, Ambassador Sohail Mahmood, Air Marshal Zahid Mahmood, and other distinguished speakers, Dr. Sadia Zahoor, Mr. Javed Iqbal, have I missed anyone? Dr. Marine Afzal. Ladies and gentlemen, it has been a very engrossing discussion on a very topical subject. And we have heard the views, opinions of experts, from various angles. I may add just a few views of a non-expert, What we are discussing is reflection of the constant technology, the advancement of the world, from mechanical to electric to electronic and now computer. So this is happening all the time in the world, technological advancement. What's distinguished the present development is the speed with which this is happening. Lenin said, there are decades when nothing happens, and there are weeks when decades happen. So this is what we are witnessing, as Air Marshal Saab said, that we should not be just thinking of anticipating what will happen in 5 years, 10 years. Even we don't know how much the technology will evolve in the next few months even. So these developments are really mind-boggling. An example, Google says it has developed quantum computer which can compute in just 3 minutes what old computers used to take 10,000 years. 3 minutes. So this was questioned by IBM. They said, no, it will take 2.5 days. That is also quite astounding, Now, see, I think I don't have to go into it, that there are very much advantages in what's happening, but then there are many challenges also. Because what we are facing is cybercrime, cyber terrorism, even cyber warfare among nations. And the things are happening in a fashion that many people, even Pakistan, is not fully equipped. And for that, we have to take many proactive actions at the policy level, in the legal domain, in technical level, capacity building. So the challenge is humongous. Of course, we should appreciate what the government is trying with its limited resources, but it cannot do it all alone. You have to have collaboration with the private sector, with the regional countries, international organizations, and then perhaps we can put up some firewall to protect our national interests against this avalanche of cyber potential warfare. So many proposals have been made in this regard, and I think that was the purpose of this seminar, to raise awareness about this challenge and also to think over possible ways how to manage this situation. At the global level, as was pointed out, under the UN auspices, some effort is being made. There are 3 questions. Whether some say that present international law is enough, that is applicable to even cyber domains. Others say, no, you need to have new laws, binding laws. And the third opinion is just a declaration, of intent and not binding. So the discussion goes on, some agreement, but no final agreement as yet. And that is understandable because the things to be regulated are also changing very fast. So we hope through collaborative efforts at the national level, regional level, international level, we will try to manage this situation in a good manner as possible. So thank you very much, ACDC and Director General, for arranging this very useful exercise. And I thank all of the people present here, ladies and gentlemen, for taking such keen interest in this subject. Thank you, sir.
I would now like to request all the panelists to join us for a group photo, followed by a tea at the back.